because it was obvious. In other words, if we ask you how much a student do, either you know or you don't know. And the other stuff you can, you know. And so then I skipped and I went to the other school. So basically, I finished up in the Czech school. Then that was it.
How were you treated by the other students?
I had no problem. We were basically the same group. I had no problem. I mean, like students, we have fights or things like that, but that wasn't natural.
What Gentile friends did you have
Now,
then?
then, not close friends. I mean, we had neighbors which we would play once in a while. They had boys or girls my age, but we never became close friends because, for the simple reason, there just wasn't time. It sounds a thing, but there wasn't time. The only time we would get together is like on a special holiday, or when they would cut the hay or something. They would try and see if I can go and help them, or in the fall they would make lekvar, and we would have a big cookout there. You know, we would help the prunes and mix the thing there. You know, things like that. But that's but not real close friends, like go to each other's house or things like that.
How would you describe yourself as a young person in those days?
Very shy, and now thinking back, I would imagine sensitive, maybe overly, I don't know, but I was a very shy boy. Still am, I think, but.
In what businesses were the Jewish families involved in Slatina?
The friends that I had with, like I said, that Shlomo, they were no business. Herman's parents, they had a horse and wagon. These were my close friends, the families. The other ones, they were a carpenter, there was a tailor or a barber, things like that. I didn't have any friends that were like in the business, because we had a lot of stores. There were Jewish stores, Jewish-owned stores, fabric stores, grocery stores, all kinds of things. There was the main street downtown was practically all Jewish owned. That's where we had the two of our temples were on that street, and they were blacksmith, all kinds of things. But I never really had any friends that were from the business, higher class, so to speak, higher echelon. We had nothing. We had nothing in common except in school, and that was it. And Cheder, the ones that they did come already later on, you know, with the rabbi, I had no problems, because in school or in Cheder it really doesn't matter. It's how you do, and that's all. No.
What did you do after you completed your education?
I went. Well, first of all, for about a year, I didn't do nothing. And then I went to become in a fabric store. The system what they had over there in Europe, maybe they still do, I don't know. You went as a trainee. You went either as a tradesman or tailor or carpenter, whatever, or in a store. I couldn't get any place else, and so they got me into this store as a trainee, as a store clerk. And you practically work for nothing. The owner of the store, I do not remember the names. They were very nice people, and him especially. And I think it was like a family-owned store because he had his two brother-in-laws working there with them. In other words, they owned the store together. And they came from another town, from Miskolc, I believe, big town. And they would give me, like once in a while, they would give me a little money on the side, you know, because, you know, there was no actual pay. So they were very nice, but they didn't last too long, maybe half a year.
What was the economic situation in Slatina in those days?
I really can't comment too much on that because you kind of live your own little world, and I didn't know what it means really as far as economics go. I know I went to the main street and there were stores there. They were selling ice cream on the corner or candy or whatever. I couldn't afford to buy it. And things like that. They had things, you know, and I just didn't, I knew I don't have it, and that's all.
What were your dreams and your goals then?
Well, I was always dreaming to become something, to make something of myself, to be independent and not to depend on somebody else to support me. That was my main thing.
What did you want to become?
It didn't. I really didn't had no trade, so to speak of. And I wound up with no trade until I came to the States. So when I came to the States, I had no trade, even though I finished a couple of courses in the refugee camps in Italy. But that was for different reasons. They taught me how to drive a tractor, you know, figuring maybe I'll wind up in Israel, you know, things like that. But I had no trade, so only thing, and that even made it harder because I knew it would take a lot for me to accomplish, to be self-supporting or independent, so to speak, and that's it. And I had hopes, but it didn't look too promising.
What kind of books and newspapers did you enjoy reading?
Then we had books. Let's start with the easy part, books, only from school. We didn't have any books at home. We had seders, you know, things like that. And sometimes when we went to the Cheder, especially the second rabbi, he would give me sometimes a book to read, you know, something besides the Cheder. You know, he would let me take it home. And once I got a little bit bigger, I joined the Chalutzim and the Mizrahi. I got some stuff there. They would have certain books there, certain magazines, certain flyers, things like that. And of course, from school, whatever was in school, sometimes they would have homework, and you know, and they would, you know, you would have to take the book home from school. But we didn't have, like they have here, I see on my kids, you know, in school, where you have to write reports on a book. We didn't have that.
So if you could read, or if you did have the opportunity to read something, what kind of book would it be? Or what type of stories did you enjoy reading?
I always liked factual books. I liked history, and I wasn't too much for the lighter stuff, you know, like too many silly romances. When I say silly, you know, because that's what if you could get, you could only get them little things. You know, I liked more serious stuff, and history and factual things. That I always prefer that.
How did the Jews and the non-Jews, the Gentiles, get along in your town?
Well, up to the time we knew, of course, that there is a difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. They didn't give us problems as such, but they knew you were called a Jew, and the way the word was said, you knew that there is more to it than just being a Jew. The only time where we would have trouble to look out was, for some reason, their holidays, their religious holidays. And especially in the winter holidays, we would have to watch out because they would use excuses. I don't know, they would dress up, you know, some costumes or whatever, and if you got caught, you got beaten, you got whipped, you know, you got things like that.
And what did you think about that? Why did you think that was
I was
happening?
just afraid. I knew to stay out of the way, and that's it. You know, we didn't until when we started going to the Chalutzim, you know, and over there they started to bring up and sort of bring our attention more to it, to the fact why should you have to be afraid to go down the street on a particular day just because they have a holiday? You see, for us it was a mixture. My grandmother, my family there, my aunts, and that was a fact. You just knew that days you better stay in the house and be careful if you have to go, watch out. That was it. And you were always considered a Jew. But other than that, and I can only go from my little world over there. I don't know how the rest of the village.
And what were you reading in the newspapers, or what did you hear in the town about Hitler and Nazi policies?
Well, first of all, when I say we, I didn't get the newspaper. The only time when the Hungarians started, when the trouble started, I could see, like, in other words, somebody else in the village would have a paper, and that thing would be passed down from person to person, and we started to realize the problems. Before that, we really didn't know that much. We were not aware of as much of with the Hitler, like between 33 and 38, we did not know too much about it.
When did you start hearing?
Just before the Hungarians, when they took over, when they invaded the Czech Republic, and then when Hungary started to come, taking over our territory, we became already more aware of that, and we started, like I said, you know, then we started to go. I was also bigger already. I could understand more, and to go see who's got a paper and who's got. There were some radios in the village, of course, but we didn't have any. You could hear, you know, you get more news from the radio than you would get from the papers, because the papers were local government controlled. There were no opposition papers or anything such. There is no such thing. Once in a while you would get a flyer, you know, where somebody snuck in, you know, but that was basically it. So the most information which you got was from the radio.
And what year did you start getting all that information?
38. Because in 38 we began to already to, again, also maybe the people had their knowledge before already, but I was still not aware, too young or whatever, not involved.
And what
So,
were you doing at the time when you started getting this information?
1939, when Hungary took over, that's when I was working in that store as a county clerk, and the county clerk, I mean the clerk, store clerk. That's when we started to know more about it. Not only that, those people, they had access to more information than I had.
And so what happened when the Hungarians invaded?
Well, the Hungarians took over in 1939. Please don't ask me what month. They took over, and I don't know exactly details between 39 and 40. I know that in 1940.
Tell me what happened to you, Mr. Berry.
The what?
Tell me what happened to you.
Well, in 1940, my problem started early, like I said, in 1940 already, because, again, I don't remember how or why or the situation, the condition, but I was not a Hungarian citizen. They did not consider me a citizen because I was born in Slatina. My mother was born in Vincești in Romania, and my parents were not married in City Hall. They were not legally married according to them. They were only got married by a rabbi, which didn't mean anything. So officially I was a Romanian citizen and not a Hungarian citizen. So they started to, I had to go to report to the police station every Friday. And that's what the problem started.
And what happened when you reported?
Well, they would make us sit, and it would make me sit there for a while, and then when they started with the Jewish things, hollering at you, pushing you around because you're a Jew. Because I am sure that there must have been a lot of other people just like me that were not citizens because for the same reason. And some of the Romanians, especially the Romanians, because a lot of them even had property on the other side of the river. A lot of them had property on the other side of the river, and I'm sure they nobody got married in City Hall at that time, not by us over there anyway. So, but it didn't bother them, they only bothered us. We had to go. I didn't see one Romanian going to report to the thing. And depending then how the police in charge or the gendarmes, you know, how they were, what kind of mood they were in. Sometimes they would do nothing, you just make you sit there for a while, then go home, or sometimes they would push you around with the bayonets, you know, and make fun. Practically, as far as they were concerned, they were having fun.
And so, what happened to you?
Then it got, towards the end already, the 1940, towards the end, it got worse. Now they said I have to report twice, on Monday and on Friday. For whatever reason, that maybe I'm going to run away, whatever.
What were you doing in the interim between 40 and 42?
Not much. Not much of anything,
How
really.
was the situation with food for you?
Well, the food situation was pretty bad because at that time already, my grandmother, if her children, they would send her anything, it would become scarcer, less and less. Now, obviously they must have taken it because what they would do is they would take some dollars, $5, $10, whatever, and put it in the envelope and in the letter. You know, that's how they would send it. And sometimes we just wouldn't get the letters at all, and sometimes you would get a letter without the money. And once in a while they would electric through. Now how that happened, I don't know. And I know because my grandmother didn't write or read, so I was the letter writer. That's also one of my responsibilities. That was a big thing to do because I would write the letters to America, you know, and then I would read the letters, they would come. And also they would send us packages, you know, they would send packages like once in a year, like for the holidays, whatever, and for my grandmother, some clothes for me, you know, from my aunt. So it got pretty tight, and I couldn't get a job as such because, like you said, what did I do? Not much. What I would do is go and hang around, like on the main street sometimes, and if somebody needed help, I don't know, unload a wagon or load a wagon or do little things like that, and they would pay me whatever they would pay me. And my grandmother let me keep that.
What kind of restrictions were they placing against the Jews?
I am not that much aware of the restrictions on the village and the community. I'm not that much aware. I don't know exactly because I was too concerned, too involved with my own thing, because I didn't know. They kept telling me, you know, when I would go there and they would be having fun, you know, and they, we'll take care of you, and you don't have too much to go. No, we'll do this, we'll do that, you know. So I was too much concerned with myself, and my grandmother was getting worse. And my aunt and her daughters, they had their problems because when the Hungarians took over, see, before it was still, this part was Czechoslovakia and the other side of the river was Romania. But between the Czechs and the Romanians, it was a very, they had a very close thing, you know. They could cross, like a lot of people owned farms on both sides. In other words, people over here and the other way around, you know. And as it happens, my cousin, that barber, he married a girl from the other side. And her daughter married a man from the other side.
When you say the other side, what?
Romania, in other words, from the other side of the river. And they had their problems because they couldn't get together. It was getting very strict. So we were kind of, you become like, you worry about own little things, you know, what you can do.
Well, what would happen to you if you didn't report to the jail?
Well, I found out for some reason once I I didn't report. I don't remember exactly why. And whatever excuse I gave them, they didn't take, and they kept me there. It was a Friday night. I went to report Friday night, and they kept me there till over the weekend. And my grandmother, of course, and my aunt there, you know, they were going crazy, you know, but there is nothing, I don't know, they tried to come, whatever. So they must have gotten to somebody and somehow that they said they're going to release me, but if it happens again, they're not going to release me anymore. So when I came home, I picked myself up and I just left. That's when I left Slatina for the first time.
How did they notify you that you had to report to the prison in the first place?
They came to your house. The big gendarmes, big bayonets, they had them big heads with feathers, so it must have been, looked like 7 feet tall to me. And they came to your house and they looked for you.
And what did they say?
They said, you have to report.
Why did you have to report?
Because you're not a citizen.
And so what did it mean to them that you were Jewish? How did you know it had something to do with Your being Jewish.
Well, I would imagine, I know because they didn't ask the other ones to report, they only asked the Jews to report. So it couldn't be a coincidence, it just wouldn't. I mean, we had people right across the street, Romanians, and like I said, nobody got married in City Hall at the time. And they were all intermixed because, not to go back in history, because before the war, before the First World War, that was both sides of that part of Romania and this part of Czechoslovakia was all part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So it was one country at that time. So they were all intertwined.
You just said that was the first time I left Slatina. When did you leave Slatina?
When? In 1941, beginning of 1941.
Why did you leave?
Because I wanted to get away from them. They were telling me, then you start talking and you hear stories. And,
What kind of stories?
they were that they're going to go after you and they're going to take them all after a while. They're going to take you all and they're going to put you away in a labor camp. So they said, when I say they, the people, you know, they had the radio contact, and not contact, but the radios, they were listening to the news, and they were getting, I guess they were getting papers too, I don't know. And they said, you're better off if you're not around. So I just took off. I went to Budapest.
How was that for your grandmother? How was that for your grandmother?
I don't know. I never really asked her, number one. And number two, she was pretty bad already. She was getting senile. She didn't know most of the time what was going on. She just didn't. So, but my aunt and her daughter, and I had spoken to my cousin too, who I considered up in the world news. You know, he was a barber, so I guess barbers get all the news. And he also said your best bet is to try and get away.
We're going to change tapes now. When you got to Budapest, what was the atmosphere there?
I was overwhelmed. That was my first time in a big city. I really didn't know too much. I couldn't really say what the atmosphere was as far as the Jewish situation. I didn't have enough information on it, so to speak.
How did you know where to go?
I went to, she was an aunt, well, 2 times removed aunt from my mother's side. I went to her. How? I had the address, obviously. I can't recall whether I had previously spoken to her. I must have, write to her, rather, you know, whatever. I must have, because, you know. And I came to her to stay there. And they had a small apartment in Budapest. She had a boy. Her husband was a newspaper vendor. He would sell newspapers. And she worked as a maid for a local rabbi.
What were their names?
No names. I don't even remember the boy's name. And she gave me lodging and food, whatever the family, whatever they ate. And to make a little money, I thought the original thing was I was going to teach her boy, I was going to tutor her in Hebrew because he had problems. Even though she worked for this rabbi, and obviously he must have suggested that maybe he should get somebody to tutor him at home. Because she was a very religious woman, not the husband. She was very religious, and she wanted him to know, or to get the knowledge. So I guess that must have been the original thought, that I should tutor him, and she would give me lodging and whatever. And then she also got me about 3 other pupils that I would tutor in Hebrew. I say Hebrew, I didn't teach them the Hebrew language. Just we learned Chumash, I was good.